Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some PathOfExile discussion. Well, today is day 12 of the Lake of Kalandra expansion, second week, second roadmap of potential changes coming further forward. I want to go through this. I'll put a link down in the description below if you just want to read the original post from Grinding Your Games, but this can broadly be summarized as 5 main categories of changes that they're discussing. The first ones relate to general loot, the second one to Archnemesis, the third one to minion survivability, the fourth one to the Lake of Kalandra, and then the fifth is miscellaneous things. Let's start with minion survivability first. GGG have identified that minions are dying more often than they want, but they've not yet identified which monsters are causing those killing blows. This has been a long-term problem in PathOfExile, and GGG have implemented a system where a number of monster skills that are designed to instantly kill players don't instantly kill minions. So as an example here, you have the Maven's Evacuate the Dance Floor move. This absolutely always kills players outside complete meme level defenses. It's something where you're meant to drop everything you're doing and run to the safe spots in the arena. However, minions are stupid and they don't necessarily go there, and as a result, this Evacuate the Dance Floor move has something like 90% less damage multiplier when it strikes a minion, and therefore it doesn't tend to instantly kill them, it just chunks them for a bit of life. So this is something that they're looking at implementing on a bunch of other boss moves. Additionally, some of the auras that monsters gain, such as the Executioner aura, are also not going to apply to minions anymore. Second changes relate to Archnemesis in general. So there's a couple of things that they've identified as problems, and I think there's one that they've missed. So firstly, they think that Stormstrider is overtuned at the moment. I'm not even necessarily sure I agree with this. I've never felt like I've been in particular danger from lightning mirages from Stormstrider this league. They got nerfed really hard early in 3.18. They were pretty crazy 3.18.0, but by 3.18.1 they didn't feel all that scary, and I don't feel they are now. That said, they're in line for a bit of a nerf. Additionally, they're looking at a cap on the number of Archnemesis modifiers that can spawn on monsters that spawn in certain unusual circumstances. Either they can't drop items, or potentially more commonly, the ones that spawn as additional monsters during boss fights. Here, the real problematic ones are the Belfry map boss, the Lava Lake map boss, and the currently not on the Atlas Desert Spring map boss. These 3 map bosses spawn large numbers of monsters at various points during the encounter, and some of them are rare. The really dangerous situation is when you get an aura on one of those rares, and additionally, it has 3 or 4 mods, so it's not something you can burst down quickly. Those ones are really sketchy, and I think they should look at them. However, the one thing that's not mentioned when it comes to Archnemesis and monster danger is Hasted. Hasted as an aura is just really scary at the moment. I think that what GGG should do here is take a leaf out of minion damage support. Minion damage support makes your minions much more damaging than they'd otherwise be. That's the whole purpose of it. But it has a drawback that is minions also have considerably less life. I think the Hasted aura should borrow from this. Monsters that have the Archnemesis Hasted mod should have less life than they do now. This would mean that they'd be more susceptible to ailments, they'd be more susceptible to being stunned, even by characters that don't specialize in ailments and stun, and you'd also have more capacity to burn them down before they overwhelm you. That is probably the most dangerous of the Archnemesis modifiers in the game now, far more so than Lightning Mirages from Stormstrider, in my opinion. The other one that's dangerous at the moment that also needs another look, and I've said this for a while, is Aberrath Touched. Aberrath Touched is fundamentally fair as long as the projection that appears when it casts its meteor is on screen. But if that projection appears off screen, Aberrath Touched can one-shot. I think the simple solution here is to nerf the damage that's done by Aberrath's meteors when the monster that's casting them is not close to the player at the time that the thing resolves. That would make it far more fair than it currently is. So that's Archnemesis out of the way, as well as minion survivability. Next, there's a number of things related to loot. Firstly, we're monitoring the current situation where players feel compelled to swap items or hire a magic find color against specific 4-mod Archnemesis modifiers. This includes anything that's got Solaris touched, Lunaris touched, or Shikari touched, and especially if they also have Opulent as well. These monsters drop a tremendous amount of loot, and it is quite simply optimal at the moment to bring in someone else who has item rarity and item quantity stats on their gear and have them deal a killing blow, even if you have to split the loot 50-50 with them. This is a real feel-bad situation, and I think that the only solution here is to identify how many of these monsters are being spawned, and GGG can just do this by checking maybe 100,000 maps that have been run, or maybe 1 million maps that have been run. How many of them are spawned? How many of them are dropping certain amounts of loot? What percentage of them are being culled at the moment? And then once you've done that, you can assess how much of a nerf it is to typical player income per map if you make it so that these monsters are completely unaffected by item rarity and item quantity stats on the gear of the character that delivers the killing blow. Then make that change and then return that loot somewhere else. Maybe give it to map bosses. So if it turns out that doing this reduces the amount of Divine Orbs and Exalted Orbs that drop over 1,000,000 map sample by 2,000, then you can return that loot by giving every map boss in the game a 1 in 500 chance to drop a Divine Orb and a 1 in 500 chance to drop an Exalted Orb. There, the same amount of loot is dropping across the entire economy, but you get rid of this really bad situation that exists at the moment. In terms of other loot changes, planning to buff Tainted Currency. Tainted Fusings were nerfed considerably. In Scourge, Tainted Fusings were so good that they made normal Fusing Orbs no longer feel like loot. They just felt like clutter on the ground, same as the Blacksmith's Whetstones that drop next to them. In 3.19, we've had the reverse situation, where Fusings have been so much better than Tainted Fusings that Tainted Fusings are basically worthless. Except that there are people who don't realise this and therefore still overpay for them. So what needs to be done in order to fix this is to set Tainted Fusings to be somewhere in the 40% success range. If you do that, you can probably find a happy medium where Tainted Fusings are good, but Fusing Orbs aren't turned into clutter by it. That's going to be a difficult one to get right, and I do think it's probably better to underbuff them than it is to overbuff them, because if you overbuff them, you've just killed all of the Fusings in the League economy, and therefore you have made it so that every individual player's regular mapping gets worse unless they're doing Beyond. There's also another commentary that they're aware of feedback about loot in PathOfExile overall, and will continue to discuss and monitor this situation. Really, GGG are in a bit of an impossible situation here. As long as fast, efficient endgame play is dropping 50,000 items every single hour, almost all those items are going to be rubbish, because how many items does your player equip? If your player has 25 items equipped, counting flasks, counting jewels, counting all of the other item slots, and then you only seek to upgrade each one of them once per 6 hours of gameplay, then that means that you're going to be upgrading 4 items per hour. If 50,000 items are dropping on the ground, well, that means that 99.992% of them are not going to be good enough for you to equip. That is the problem that they're in at the moment. Ultimately, there's no really good solutions to this, and I don't know exactly what you can do in order to turn this around. Fortunately, it's not my job to try and figure it out. There's also a line referring to Harvest here. We're aware of feedback around Harvest crafts, but don't have any commentary on this yet. This one's a difficult one to get right because Harvest is still incredibly powerful in 3.19. Both of the people that I know that have 3 or more mirrors in this league got there through Harvest. They got there through buying Harvest juice off other players and then crafting items en masse. If you do improve Harvest, you end up helping them more than you help anyone else, and you'll end up pricing out a bunch of people from the existing crafts. So that's something that needs to be kept in mind while trying to solve this problem. Finally, there are some changes that are being planned to the Lake of Kalandra content. So there are some changes that are being made to terrain collision size of Spark and Lightning Strike. And these should help with collision detection inside the Lake of Kalandra, but also in another couple of places as well. And then there are some changes that are coming to the Lake of Kalandra, a quality of life change allowing you to see at a glance which areas on your current tablet have already been completed, as well as making the reflecting mist more common, which is a power increase. I think GGG should go for a situation where of the rare rings that are equipped in the league, about 60% of them come from the league mechanic, and about 40% of them come from other crafting methods. That'll make 3.19 quite a bit different to previous leagues. That is a really difficult balancing situation though, and again, I don't really know exactly how I'd go for it. That is just the goal you'd be trying to get. Anyways, that's the day 12 update. May your Valorbs have interesting results, and I will see you around. I will continue to put out info about the Atlas memories as I go through the rest of them.